Yeah, at the moment it's kind of weird, I heard, where people can do 11s, but then as soon as they do 12, it's so much harder that it's very frustrating, which I think that is a big problem. Now, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't like the fact that you're missing, because I understand that 12s or 12s and above are supposed to be for people that really want the challenge, right? So I get that, but if you really don't have, like, if the jump from 11 to 12 is so big that you can't work your way up because it goes from somewhat easy to infinitely harder, like that's a problem, right? Like I definitely think that they should decrease the percentage gain. I think they should fix that, like to make it like maybe like only 10 or 15%. And I think they have to do it fast though, because if they don't do it now, then all of the people that are doing like higher key levels, they're gonna be f***ed, right? It's already a little bit too late almost. Because the problem is, people that already farm key levels that are like, let's say 13, 14, if they nerf the 20% buff now, then those keys will feel like they're obviously useless, right? Because obviously if they nerf the buff, then it's going to be infinitely easier to do higher key levels, right? So I feel like they're already kind of late to do this. They should have done it earlier, when it was pretty clear that the scaling's I think they should leave the season, be just other people rest for it, and just... That's scary though, like leaving a whole season without people like that's... I don't know, like... I do understand honoring people's progression is important, but to leave Emplast in a state as it is right now, like I think that hurts the game like way too much. And I wonder why they're not thinking about that. Like sometimes, like honestly, sometimes I think Blizzard is literally like stupid. Like I'm sorry, but like clearly people are really frustrated with the Emplast scaling, and it demotivates them to play the game. And what are you gonna do? Like sit there and think about it and let's just wait what happens? What do you mean let's wait what happens? You know, like obviously if you wait and see, then people are gonna stop playing. Like, how does that make any sense? The faster you take action, the better it's gonna be for everyone involved, right? Because as I said, like honoring people's progression is really important too. I mean, maybe I'm also exaggerating and maybe there's like more underlying issues that it's not just the scaling though. Because that's like the only reason for me to not nerf the scaling would be if they think that there's other things that is causing people to feel the way they feel about Emplast right now, you know? Because if it's not just the scaling, then fixing the scaling is not gonna help it, obviously. But they could at least start with fixing it. And if it's something else, they'll figure it out, right? I don't know. I feel like sometimes they're just really slow at adjusting things on the fly that are like problematic in the moment, you know? Like sometimes Blizzard takes forever to make adjustments where it's like, come on, like just adjust it, you know? And if it doesn't work out or if it's something different, well then adjust the other thing later. Like, I don't know. Sometimes they're just so slow. Just fix it for it. So, as part of our ongoing commitment to the tuning of both gameplay and rewards, we have some adjustments today. Oh, yeah, okay. I guess I'm just confused about the use of we have here, whatever. And we are working on more coming soon. Okay, so Mythic Keystone affixes. Increase the duration of the buffs granted by Xel'Tav's Bargain affixes to 30 seconds. We've been closely monitoring the impact of the bonuses provided by Xel'Tav's Bargain, and we're increasing their overall power level on players. We will continue to monitor the effectiveness of these buffs as well as the challenges these affixes present. Okay. Interesting. Xel'Tav's Guile now increases enemy health and damage by 10% was 20%. With the increase to the buffs granted to players by Xel'Tav's Bargain, we're reducing the effectiveness of Xel'Tav's Guile to allow players to push deeper into Keystone's system with current item levels. Okay. So basically, what they're kind of saying is that they want the jump from plus 11 to 12 to be easier now. Okay, so this is a little bit weird because I personally thought they're gonna do this change because they see that the plus 12s are too difficult. But what they're saying here is that they don't think the jump is too difficult from 11 to 12. They just want the positive affix to last for longer. And because they're buffing this, they also in return have to make the jump easier, because otherwise the jump is going to be increasing even further. So let me explain. Sometimes bargain is a positive effect on your group, right? It gives you more damage and more survivability depending on what the buff is. Once you deal with the affix correctly, you get a buff that benefits your group. And if that buff lasts longer, your group is of course also going to be stronger, which means that you're going to have an easier time getting through +2s to +11s, right? The problem with that is that from 12 onwards, you don't have the buff anymore, which means that if they buff the positive effect on the group on +2 to +11, and they do not change Xel'Tav's Guile, then that would mean the jump from an 11 to a 12 would be even harder than what it is right now, than what it was before these changes, right? So what they are saying is that they're changing it from 20 to 10 because they're increasing the buff from 20 seconds to 30 seconds. Which, again, it makes sense, but I do wish they would literally just state that the 12s are too hard. Because I think it has been a common opinion amongst M+ players that the jump from 11 to 12 was just too hard. And these changes are gonna fix that a little bit, but I feel like they should have changed it from 20 to 10 even without buffing Xel'Tav's Bargain. So now that change is slightly, like, quote-unquote less effective to make the progression from 11 to 12 easier. It is, of course, a good change. And I literally talked about this like yesterday or 2 days ago, where I basically said, okay, everyone's frustrated about the M+ scaling. Everyone thinks that jumping from 11 to a +12 is just like too hard. And I wished that Blizzard would have fixed this issue beforehand and addressed the issue beforehand. And I was kind of getting frustrated because I felt like the longer they wait for a change like this, the more they invalidate the score that people have farmed so far, right? Because obviously the M+ score that you farm within a season matters usually throughout the whole season, right? But we had the situation when they introduced Aug Evokers in Season 3 of Dragonflight. So in Dragonflight Season 3, at the start, everyone was, farming gear, everyone was farming M+, and then halfway through the season, they implemented Aug Evokers. And all of a sudden, the score that you could get in M+ before Aug Evokers were released was much lower than afterwards. And then all of the score that people had already farmed was irrelevant. Because the keys that you could do with Aug Evokers was like 3 key levels higher on average, right? Because Aug Evoker was just so strong. And that's why I personally think it sucks a little bit if Blizzard changes things halfway through a season that invalidates the previous done keys. That's why I hoped that Blizzard would make a change as fast as possible at the start of the season, which is still right now would still be considered the start of the season, I guess. Like it's within the first month or so. And then I was like stressing. I was like, come on, Blizzard, like we need a change now. Clearly, if we don't change this right now, people get bored and we can't just like wait till the end of the season, and now they changed it. So, first of all, thank you, Blizzard. I appreciate this. I'm very glad that they pulled the trigger and that they fixed the 20% buff or the Xel'Tav's Guile. I still think that this is not the only change they should do. I definitely think they should also fix the death penalty. The 15 seconds death penalty, I think it should just be removed. I personally don't see any benefit in it. I personally think it's literally only bad. I cannot see a positive effect from that affix. I personally think it literally just should be removed completely. I honestly don't see what's positive about it. I think it's just frustrating for all key ranges that the affix is applied to. So I personally wish they would just remove that, but they apparently disagree. And it's strange because people have already talked about this so long. Like even before the War Within came out, people have told Blizzard that they think this 15 seconds death penalty is a bad thing. Even I asked about it in the M+ interview, and they said they're open to like maybe change their approach to it, but like there hasn't been anything. And clearly now we can see that it is bad. Like a lot of people agree it's just a bad affix. So I don't know if Blizzard wants to like change this or not, but I wish they would. And I also wish they would change this as soon as possible to make sure that, again, the score is not invalidated later on. Without the death penalty, wouldn't keys have too much time to complete somehow? How could a key have too much time to complete? Think about it. Like, you can't have too much time. If a key has too much time, that just means you do higher key levels. Let's say you have an hour to finish Mists of Tyrannosaith. Well, all that does is that people will be able to do higher key levels, right? Because the more time you have, the slower you can do your pulls. And right, you would do like a really high key and you start to seeing half the pack and play one mob at a time or something, right? Of course, the bosses would still hold you back eventually because even if you might be able to see half the trash and only play half a trash pack, you wouldn't be able to do that with a boss. So at some point, the timer wouldn't make any sense to be that high anymore. But having a death penalty or not having a death penalty is not going to give you so much time. What if you don't have any deaths at all? Then you don't, right? So not having a death penalty doesn't really change that much with the timer itself. It's just less frustrating to die, which I think is a good thing, because it's already as frustrating as it possibly can be to die, right? The one thing I personally don't understand is because when I do M+, I think we all know when you play M+, dying is bad. Like, no one likes to die in an M+ dungeon. You lose out on damage, you lose your buffs, you lose your cooldowns, you lose so much stuff. Like, no one does something like super risky because they know that dying is bad. Just from the pure normal perspective, just from the death itself. And as soon as you add a death penalty to it, it makes it just even more punishing to die, but that does not change, in my opinion. Like, I think Blizzard has this like weird way of thinking where they think, oh, if the death penalty is higher, then people will do like less risky things. But I personally don't think that is true at all. Like, I don't think the fact that you have like a higher death penalty makes you do less risky stuff, because people already think that a death is already punishing enough, right? Why would I adjust my risk factor within dungeon just because there's like a slightly higher death penalty? When I make my route and when I figure out my strategy for a dungeon, I'm trying my very best to have the risk be as low as possible, because I don't want people to die, because if people die, then you lose so much time even without the death penalty, because people, as I said, people lose their cooldowns. You might have a full group wipe, because if one person dies, then maybe you're missing interrupts, and then you are all wipe, and then you have to go again, which just costs you an insane amount of time, right? So I think this whole death penalty thing is not really adding or removing any sort of risk factor to people's like strategy. I've never ever heard anyone say, oh, you know what, we should have this pull be riskier, and if someone dies, whatever. Like, people care about deaths in M+, even without a death penalty. So I honestly don't understand what they think the purpose of the increased death penalty is. Like, I don't understand what they think it accomplishes in any kind of like positive way. Pack skips? Yeah, but people don't want to do death skips. Like, a death skip costs you a lot of time, even with zero death penalty. Like, even if you have no death penalty at all, if you do a death skip to skip packs, it does not save you time at all. Unless you have... No, like, you lose time either way, because you need to walk through, everyone needs to die, you need to somehow get a rest up, then you need to rest everyone else, and you have to food up again. Like, a death skip is something from the past. People did death skips in Legion when M+ was completely new. And people immediately stopped doing death skips as soon as they realized that it's actually just like a big time loss to do them, right? Death skips are something from the past that we don't need a death penalty to discourage. We already stopped doing death skips a long time ago once we realized it's actually just not efficient. But yeah, so anyway, to get back to this change, I have been a little bit negative now because of the death skipping thing. Not death skipping, but like the death penalty. But this is a good change, of course. Like, this 20 to 10% change is a very good change, and we'll see how it affects M+ now. I would assume that it's going to be quite a lot easier to do higher keys now. And obviously it's still going to be hard to do high keys, but it's going to make the progression a little bit easier. Because the biggest problem with M+ currently, or before this change, was the fact that 11s felt easy enough and then 12s felt infinitely harder. This like change from 11 to 12 being such a big step creates an environment where people can't feel the sense of progression, which really sucks, right? Because Mythic Plus is literally meant to give you a sense of progression because of the infinite scaling, right? If this jump from one key level to the next feels like it's like this insanely like big wall, then that's really discouraging. A lot of people want to have like a progression where they can feel, okay, we're getting closer to the key level that I want to do, where you can, like the difficulty slowly increases, right? People don't want to go from LFR to Mythic rating, right? So we'll see how this change affects that. Maybe it's going to be a lot better, maybe not, who knows? But it's a good change, and it's good that they're addressing this. The fact that they're increasing the positive effect from the bargains might or might not nullify this effect. I don't think it does, but yeah, we'll see. Honestly, would removing Solotov's Guile not just be better, honestly? Like, what is the purpose of this? The purpose of this affix is the fact that they don't want a 12 to be easier than an 11, right? Because as soon as you enter a 12, you don't have like the affix anymore. But the affixes that we have until 11 are mainly positive effects. They're not negative, unless you mess them up, right? Like the affix we have right now, certainly, like especially if it's a 30 seconds buff, I personally think if you remove this completely, Xelata's Guile, a 12 would not be easier than an 11. A 12 would still very much be harder than an 11. They do still create complications. Yeah, but not to an extent that you wouldn't be faster. I honestly believe that a 12 would still be quite a lot harder than 11, even without this. Just because you're missing out on the positive effects of these affixes. Because not to mention, like obviously a 12 is already scaling more than 11, right? The mobs have more HP and they do more damage. And on top of that, you just don't have the positive effect, which can be really strong, right? So I don't know. I personally think this is not necessarily required. So yeah, and we'll see it. Then what else do we have? The Necrotic Wake, Silramus, Gatekeeper's Wrath of Silramus, periodic damage reduced by 25%. Oh, good, I guess. Skeletal Monstrosity, enemy force contribution increased by 20%. Okay. The effects of Bloody Javelin no longer stack. Oh wow. Surgeon Stitch Flash, Surgeon's health reduced. Oh wow, okay, good. Creation Festering Rot damage reduced by 30% again. Okay, so Stitch Flash shouldn't be that hard anymore now. Then Skarmorak's health reduced. Skarmorak is now stunned for 4 seconds after 45 shells broken. Skarmorak's crystal and eruption damage reduced. Then Iric, Voidspeak Iric's health reduced. Okay. Yeah, so these are overall good changes, I guess. We'll see if that's enough. All hail the slavery of a WoW. You talked about a plus yesterday and they changed stuff. That is crazy, right? Like literally yesterday I said that they should change the scaling and then they actually did. It's like they're listening to me.